Welcome in here. We have huge news coming from one of our own broadcasters, and Mitchell Lyons. He just was coming back from rehab.
Mitch was in rehab? Why was that?
He actually knew too much stuff. We also have guest appearances from Nolan Walker and McDulin here on Ohio Sports Zone.
Welcome back on Ohio Sports Zone. Ethan Graham, Bobby Levine, as always. Bobby, a big week for the women. Bobcats on the hardwood, a 68-65 loss to Kent State. Surprising to most people around the MAC. It was a very close game, 10 lead changes, 9 ties. Bobby, what happened in that game? Take us through it.
Yeah, very tough loss here for the Bobcats. They were undefeated at home, perfect so far. They were 7-0. First loss, huge loss to Kent State. I think Kent State, even on paper, lost that game. Did not show on the scoreboard, though. Two of the best players, that's Jasmine Weatherspoon and Kiera Lampkins, fouled out, and that ended up being the final story as the Bobcats end up losing a very heartbreaking one. Agler had a foul shot to tie the game up under 10 seconds and missed that. That ended up being the downfall right there.
Bob Bolden, after the game, was extremely frustrated with the defense. Bobcats able to come up with 15 turnovers, but Bob Bolden saying he couldn't remember the last time they were good on defense and preached that consistency was a huge problem for them on defense throughout this game. Was that something you would agree with, the consistency on defense being an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately for the Bobcats, they just couldn't seem to get the stop when they needed to. They were up 6 to 8 points, seems like the entire second half, and it seemed like they were in control, and then everything started unraveling. When Jasmine Weatherspoon got in foul trouble and ended up fouling out there late second half in the fourth quarter, things just turned the wrong way for the Bobcats. Could not get the basket to fall. Even they brought in a couple bench players. Hannah Bosker tried to get things going down low. Could not get things going. And the defense just played poorly for the Bobcats.
Jordan Korinek leading the Golden Flashes with 24 points on 7 of 15 shooting. Jasmine Weatherspoon, 6 points, 11 rebounds for the Cats. Kiera Lampkins adding 17 points. That is 15 points in 11 straight games for Kiera, rather. Taylor Agler, 13 points too. Moving on, later in the week, Ohio took on Toledo, beat them 64-55, a much better game all around out of the Cats, moving them to 13-4, 4-2 in the MAC, and dropping Toledo to 12-5, 3-3 in the MAC. Defensively, something that was much improved for the Bobcats this game, 21 turnovers. Bobby, what did you see out of the Cats in this game?
Yeah, I want to give a shout-out here to Kiera Lampkins, probably the best player overall for the Bobcats. She surpassed 1,500 points. She's the fourth Bobcat to do so, last time since Kiana Black, who the Bobcats are definitely missing big time.
Sure.
I forgot to mention that last game. That's who they missed big time behind the arc. The Bobcats as a whole, as I said, 21 turnovers. On offense, though, they committed 19. Big stat to watch out for, but that's a huge win moving forward. Going on the road to Toledo, probably a top 5 MAC team, and getting a huge win and holding them at under 60 points.
Yeah, Bob Bolden much more pleased with the play of his defense after this game. Said it was the best defensive game they've had in a long time, but still preaching consistency, one game at a time mentality for Ohio. Coming up this week, you got Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan at home. Eastern Michigan having a down year, 5-13, 0-6. Not so much worried about them, but that Western Michigan game, what should we look for in that game out of the Lady Cats?
Yeah, I'm looking big time this weekend, though. At home, coming back after the bad loss last Saturday against Kent State. They can get back on their feet, play some good defense, and hopefully in front of a good crowd. The game's at 2 o'clock, so if you're in Athens, please come out and support the Bobcats. And then moving forward to next week, they end up playing, as you said, Western Michigan, who's 13-4. Going to be a huge game for the Lady Cats. Moving forward, we'll talk about the men's team a little bit later, as they might be taking over as the top spot on the hardwood moving forward later on this March coming up. But I do expect the Bobcats to win these 2 games at home and moving forward and getting hot towards the postseason.
You talk about Kiera Lampkins there previously, becoming the 4th Bobcat to amass 1,500 total points. Bobby, I'm curious, in your time at Ohio University, where does Kiara Lampkins rank in terms of the Lady Cats you've seen on the hardwood?
It's very hard. Looking back the last couple years when Bob Bolden has come to Ohio University and taken this program to heights it's never seen before, you got to put her up there with the Kiana Blacks of the world. Just an unbelievable girl to talk to as a team. If you want to start a program, she's the kind of girl you want to start with that layer foundation. She and Kiana Black could possibly have their jerseys retired here before they move on to the great adult world, as you say. Get that degree, you never know. I think they should have both those girls as they've set their name and records in stone here at Ohio University.
Once again, big weekend coming up for the Cats, Eastern at home. We're going to move from the hardwood to the mat as we have wrestling coverage coming up next on Ohio Sports Zone.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to Ohio Sports, and I'm Bobby Levine. Alongside me is Nolan Walker. We're going to talk about wrestling. This guy knows the wrestling team more than even the parents do of the wrestlers. He's covered this team for 3 years now. The team right now was 5-4, coming off a 22-10 win against NIU last week. They've won 7 of the last 10 matches. What's going right for this team so far?
I think they're finally hitting their stride. I mean, this is a young team. I told you earlier that 8 of these starters are either freshmen or sophomores. No seniors start this team. 2 juniors. This is a young team. They got that new era mantra going on, and I think finally everything's firing on all cylinders.
Now, even with the young team, who is ranked on this team nationally?
Right now, it's your 125, 133 pounders, Shakur Laney and Cameron Kelly. They there's a few ranking systems. They fall anywhere from 16 to 20 area. These two, it's good having those as your ranked guys. 2 guys who can start the match off, get the momentum going on the Bobcat side.
Now, as a team, we are not ranked. Do you think we deserve to be ranked? I know you said a couple teams ahead of us we have beaten and we possibly can beat.
Yeah, exactly. Like Chattanooga, we beat them earlier in the season. They're ranked. So certain teams, you talk to Coach Greenlee, he thinks this team should definitely be ranked. Hopefully by the end of the year, this team becomes ranked. There's these new guys starting get their stride. Noah Forrider leading the team in wins. Zach Parker, the heavyweight, to close it out with some wins. And these are all young guys again. So once they continue to hit their stride, get that momentum going, hopefully this Bobcat team hits the rankings at the end of the year.
And then later this week, they have a huge matchup at Kent State. We talked about this. What's going on with this little rivalry we got going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's the battle for Ohio. It's a grunge match. We call it the grunge match. Every year there's a plaque. Whoever wins takes the plaque home. I mean, there's Ohio State, Cleveland State, Ohio, and Kent State. Those are the only 4 teams that have D1 wrestling in Ohio. So this has always been a rival. Miami isn't in wrestling. So, Kent State has been that formidable rival for Ohio. So it's definitely a big matchup to look forward to this weekend.
And now looking forward to the MAC championship. Do we have any possibility? I know we have such a young team to win individually, individual MAC championship, and then possibly moving forward as a team winning the MAC championship as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys you can look at like Cameron Kelly, Shakur Laney. Those are guys each year. They're definitely looking forward to making that step up. I mean, at 133 with Cameron Kelly, Jaden Ironman from Missouri kind of bumped up to 141. Maybe that's an opportunity for Cameron Kelly to steal that MAC championship. Zach Parker, there's only one guy ranked at the heavyweight position. That's Gage Hutchinson of Eastern Michigan. Zach Parker beat him pretty easily this year, so that's one to look at. At 141, Noah Forrider has some opportunistic ways to get up there. Austin Reese at 165, a guy when we talked about, hasn't had the greatest season, but he's really hitting his stride now. And that's what you want to see is this guy, he can beat Selden Wright of Old Dominion, maybe get a MAC championship for himself. So if, all these guys hit their strides, get hit in the right spot, Cullen Cummings even coming off of a win over a ranked opponent in the NIU, these guys, if they all come together, MAC championship could be at Ohio University.
And I know this is a distant future, but looking at the national championship, any person or any wrestler as a whole can make possibly a ranking and possibly get on the podium. Not win it all, but get a medal.
I mean, that's what all these guys are looking forward to. It starts with MACs. You qualify from the MACs to get to the national championship, and if they can get to the national championship, they're looking to place. All-American is 1 through 8. Cameron Kelly can do it. Shakur Laney can do it. I mean, Austin Reese can do it. Cullen Cummings, Noah Foyer. You go up and down this team. Dante McGee, a guy who goes out and pins people out of nowhere. Zach Parker. So these guys, they have it in their mind that they can go out and become a national championship or capture a national championship even.
And looking at last year, we were a SAR senior loaded lineup there with so many great wrestlers that end up moving on and graduating. This year we have 0 seniors, all very young leadership moving forward. Who do we have that is redshirting and possibly incoming freshmen next year that we have to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, there's an awesome incoming class and even freshman class right now. You're looking at Mario Guillen, who's leading that freshman class right now. He could be a true freshman starter. Unfortunately, Shakur Laney, Cameron Kelly kind of have that weight class where he's at, but he's tearing it up on the redshirt world. His brother, Moises Guillen, who comes off an Ironman victory, is already declared to Ohio University. And we got these 2 tough Hagen twins coming in next year. They're from Missouri. Their mom went to Ohio University. That's where that Ohio tie comes in. And then you look at these 4, 5, 6 guys, 125 through 149 next year and years to come. It's going to be Ohio University. And it's going to be a tough one to match up with these guys.
It's a very exciting time on the mat. Talking about Ohio connections, we talked about a senior last year, or a couple years ago, Taekwon Claxton. Now in the UFC, trying to become a UFC fighter. He is 6-0. What do you have on him?
I mean, Taekwon Claxton's one of those guys. He graduated 2 years ago, was 1 match away from becoming an All-American, and he found his spot in mixed martial arts. He's 6-0, looking to be signed by UFC, Bellator, or someone. I mean, he's dominating in his degree. You look at other guys like that, like Phil Wellington, Sparty Chino, Andrew Omanchik, Cody Walters, who are all going out and just dominating in other facets besides just wrestling. In Cody Walters' case, he's coaching at Gardner Webb. At Andrew Omanchik, he's coaching at Lake Erie College. So each of them are finding their niches and they're doing great jobs.
Octagon is a whole nother level besides college wrestling, but looking forward to this weekend. Really quick, do you think we beat Kent State?
Oh, Ohio University taking Kent State down for sure. Kent State without Ian Miller, no chance.
There you go. Nolan Walker here joining us on Ohio Sports Hour. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we've got Ohio men's basketball and Mitchell Lyons joining us back here on Ohio Sports Zone.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back. Ohio Sports Zone here. Ethan Graham alongside Mitchell Lyons joining us this week. Mitch, you cover OU basketball. Obviously a tough week for them. 53-49 loss to Eastern Michigan last Saturday and an 83-68 loss to Akron. But let's put that aside for the moment. Major news for the Bobcats today. Antonio Campbell, reigning MAC Player of the Year, averaging 16.4 points, 8.9 rebounds a game, done for the season, broke his foot. How do you even begin to break down the magnitude of this injury for the Bobcats on their season?
It's a major, major loss for the Ohio Bobcats. And when you say that, it's not even really like I'm exaggerating, because Ohio lost not only their best player, Ethan, they lost the best player in the entire conference. Antonio Campbell is the MAC Player of the Year last year, and he was on his way to doing that again this year. He's that good. He's very important to Ohio's success, and that's what they lost. And now They have to go through the rest of the season without Antonio Campbell because he's been shut down with a broken foot, and they have to figure out a way to win despite that because he's not coming back. Saul Phillips obviously ruled him out for the entire season. And what's funny, though, is that we talked to Saul on Monday at media availability, and the first thing he said about Campbell's update, because he heard it in the Eastern Michigan game just a few minutes into it, was that it's not broken. So you were thinking, and he's like, there's a chance he could play. It's an as-tolerated basis, and obviously it wasn't tolerable. Well, it wasn't getting any better Tuesday and Wednesday, so Tony went back, got a second MRI, and that's when they revealed that it was broken and that Antonio Campbell has to get surgery. He will be getting it next week, and he's obviously done for the year.
Yeah, obviously you have to feel for Big Tony. Obviously had a huge offseason, lost a significant amount of weight, came in looking great, playing great. And, what's the mood in the locker room with the guys right now? I know you had a chance to talk to Coach Phillips, some of the guys today. What's the mood knowing that Antonio is going to be out for the rest of the year?
You mentioned him losing weight. That's what sucks is that, Ethan, he put in such the hard work.
Truly a great offseason.
He said he lost 20 pounds. He never felt better going in. He changed his diet, and he really felt like this was his year, and then he wasn't rewarded. Having said that, though, the feeling in the locker room, and I talked to Jerron Simmons, was that, hey, we got to move on. It's a next man up thing. The perception around the league and fans is going to be, oh, Ohio lost Tony. They're done. Well, Jerron said that's not how they think. Fans and media think that, but they're just thinking next man up, regardless of what it takes. It's still 5-on-5. It's still man versus man. They're still playing basketball. And so despite when you think of Ohio basketball, Ethan, you think of Antonio Campbell and how great he is, but in my opinion at least, Jerron Simmons is the leader. Jerron Simmons is the alpha dog and the one that makes Ohio men's basketball go. He's still there. He's still Saul's point guard. Saul Phillips still thinks Jerron's the best player in the conference, or the best point guard in the conference,
Sure.
rather. So they still have Jerron. And Jordan Dardis said today, I still think we have the best team in the MAC confidently. So they still think that they can win.
Yeah, Jerron obviously going to have to be a big guy who steps up, but more so than them is those guys usually come off the bench in the front court. Doug Taylor, Jason Carter are going to have largely increased minutes and roles. Kyrie Harley and Wadley Montpierre struggling through injuries this year. How do you view that front court situation going forward for the Bobcats? Do you think that is a front court that can drag them to the MAC tournament through the MAC tournament?
It's a front court that is extremely thin because Kyrie Harley has been shut down. Wadley Montpierre was preserving a red shirt. You think you lose Tony, maybe you pull the red shirt off Wadley and he comes back. Not the case. He had his knee drained about a month ago. He hasn't practiced in over a month.
Right.
Harley hasn't practiced in over 6 weeks, it seems. So both of those guys are not coming back. So now you have 3 guys on the injury report, and that leaves the front line to be extremely thin. Doug Taylor and Jason Carter were averaging about 15 minutes a game. That is obviously going to go up big time. And so you look at them, they're going to have to step up. Doug Taylor, a sophomore. Jason Carter's a true freshman. You were hoping that they were able to kind of come along slowly. Again, not the case. Jerron Simmons, we talked about him being the leader, and he said today that he actually sent both of those guys, Carter and Taylor, a text message this morning and said, hey, it's time to be a grown man. It's a little earlier than we thought it would be, and so it's time for you to grow up and step up and start playing basketball. And so those two are going to have to. Having said that, though, Kenny Kaminsky's still there. You look at both of them. I look at Ellis Dozier as a possible. Saul Phillips was asked today about his possibility, and he said he's already talked to Ellis Dozier about playing and coming in, playing some 3 or 4. He's a wing that can shoot as well, and if anything, give you a body, couple 6 fouls, and guard some of these versatile 4s.
I sense a lot of frustration coming from this team. Eastern Michigan last Saturday obviously got a little bit chippy. Akron, some of the body language appeared to be a little bit frustrated. Is that something the Bobcats you think can overcome? What level do you think that's going to affect their game moving forward?
Well, it's weird because you mentioned the chippiness, and it seems every game in the MAC, Ohio's got double technicals. And, Saul Phillips, again, going to Doug Taylor, growing up, he's like, before we could just kind of laugh it off. Oh, that's just Doug being Doug getting a T. Not the case anymore, Doug. You're the starter. Now it's time for him to grow up. And so Ohio likes to be physical. They have the best defense in the MAC. So when you look at that, it's going to frustrate teams because all of a sudden they're being held below their scoring average. They only allow 66 points a game. And Ohio's not going to back down regardless. They have a lot of guys that are very good. So again, this Antonio Campbell injury sucks, and it's a very big loss. But remember, come tournament play, it's guards that win. And Ohio still has Jerron Simmons, and they still have Antonio Campbell. They have the best defense in the MAC, and who knows, maybe you get hot from 3, Akron gets upset, you got a shot. But it still stinks.
Real quick before we go to break here, Bobcats going to go into DeKalb this weekend and take on Northern Illinois, who's much improved from a year ago. Marin Marich, 6'11", down low, top 20 scorer in the MAC. You think they can pull it out this weekend?
I do. This is going to be a very defensive game. Northern Illinois is the second best defense. I just said Ohio's the best defense, so very defense. Don't know what the over and under is, but I would bet the under. And I think Ohio has a shot to get the win on the road. They were 2-1 against Northern Illinois last year.
Mitchell Lyons, great work as always. Glad you're back. Coming up next, we're going to go around the country with Max McDulin with more college basketball.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to Ohio Sports Zone. I'm Bobby Levine. Next to me is Ethan Graham, and alongside him is Max McDulin. Great to have you back on the show, Max. We missed you from last semester. This last segment, we're talking about college basketball as a whole. Keep it light. I'm going to name the top 5 teams in the nation right now in the AP poll. Nova at 17-1, Kansas at 16-1, UCLA at 18-1, Gonzaga, the last team undefeated at 17-0, and Kentucky, who's 15-2. If Gonzaga, who should run the table, ends up undefeated and be a number 1 seed, do you think they have a legit possibility of running the tables and winning it all?
Well, look, I think Gonzaga should run the table. They should be an undefeated team. They're playing in a weak conference. St. Mary's is the second strongest team in that conference. St. Mary's will be an at-large bid if they don't end up knocking off Gonzaga in the conference tournament game. They'll probably fit in at around a 5 or a 6 seed. I expect even St. Mary's to have a shot at running towards a Sweet 16. So you are playing in a weak conference, but there is some competition there. But the thing that you and I were talking about before we went live here is whether or not I think Gonzaga, if they go undefeated, should be the number 1 overall seed. And I think they should. They look like the strongest team in the nation to me right now. Their depth is incredible. Right now they have 7 players averaging at least 8.5 points per game. And the thing is, it's not because it's a bunch of players who can't really score effectively. It's because they're so good at sharing the basketball. We're talking about other teams here who are a little bit more selfish. I mean, Calipari's Kentucky teams are normally very good at spreading the ball around. So I think you bring them up. That's a team that could really get on a hot run and maybe be that number 1 overall seed. I think if a team like Kentucky runs the table or Villanova runs the table from this point out, even if Gonzaga goes undefeated, it's not possible for Gonzaga to get that number 1 overall seed, but there's no way Kentucky doesn't lose one more game or Villanova doesn't win one more game in a Big East that looks really good.
Max, I want to ask you about the Duke Blue Devils. There
The Duke Blue
Devils.
Devils.
We got it out. They've lost 2 in a row to Louisville and Florida State. A lot of controversy there this season. A lot of headlines surrounding Grayson Allen and the repeated tripping incidents. Jeff Capel filling in for Coach Krzyzewski, who's going through back surgery right now. Any concern for the Blue Devils moving forward this season?
Well, the Blue Devils just feel like a reality show this season, and the sad thing about it is Kennard is having a phenomenal year. He's averaging 20 points per game. He should be the storyline, but instead, it's all Grayson Allen. And in my point of view, Grayson Allen is, give me a hot take here, the most immature athlete in college basketball right now, especially the most immature athlete on that big of a stage. And we've seen it. I mean, this is a player who by now should have learned his lesson, and I think Coach K lost a little bit of credibility. He's a guy who has great credibility. He's not going to lose much. But when he only suspended him 1 game, when it was an indefinite suspension, there's a red flag there. This is a team that has still lost 2 straight. Florida State is a team who's ranked number 10 in the country right now. I don't think we're talking about them enough. That loss doesn't, I think, hurt as much as a loss to a Louisville team that still looks like they're a very good team, don't get me wrong, number 12 in the country. They look solid, but they don't seem like a top 5 team at any point.
Sure.
Whereas a Florida State team, I think, is a little bit of a dark horse that might get that number 2 seed and play very well. So that loss to Louisville is a much bigger red flag, and just the drama at Duke all year long. No matter how good of a year Duke has, the storyline is going to be Grayson Allen and his immaturity for the rest of the season.
Yeah, looking at that as a whole there, the ACC getting a lot of headlines, good and bad, but as a whole in the college basketball world, who was your biggest upside, who's shown out, you didn't think had a good opportunity to make a good run, but right now looking good in the rankings as a whole?
Well, I mean, the deepest conference I think right now, well, when it comes to the possibility of having dark horses, is the Big East. Obviously, the deepest the conference in the country looks to be the ACC. Look very strong all the way around, which is going to help teams like Duke when it comes down to the end of the season. But you've got Villanova, Creighton, Butler, Xavier, and then even Seton Hall. If they get on a run, they looked really good for a couple of seasons there. Those are all schools that can get hot at any point and play very good basketball. Butler has a very nice win on their resume against the Cincinnati Bearcat team that looks like Mick Cronin's best Bearcat team that he's had there since Sean Kilpatrick's senior season. And honestly, Cincinnati's got two good basketball teams. They've got Xavier and Cincinnati, and that non-conference matchup coming up here in late January. I think the winner of that game could end up being a number 3 seed in the tournament. I think that's going to be a very important game. But I think my dark horse right now is definitely teams out of the Big East. My wild card dark horse right now is the University of Houston, the Houston Cougars. Obviously, I love the American Athletic Conference. You guys all know that. But the bigger reason for that is because Kelvin Sampson is their head coach. He won a lot of games at Oklahoma, was coaching in the NBA for a while after a little bit of probation, but now he's back in NCAA basketball. He seems to really be building something with the Houston Cougars, and they've won some big games, playing in a conference where they will still play SMU, and they'll play against Cincinnati, so that's a chance to improve their resume.
Massive upset last night in college hoops. Oklahoma 89-87 over West Virginia. Maybe the biggest upset we've seen all season. How surprised were you at that result of that game last night?
Well, I would be surprised, but at the same time, it's hard to be surprised when a Bob Huggins team has a bad loss. It happens every single year. This is a head coach who now has 806 wins, and it seems like no matter how good his teams are, there's always going to be one bad loss on the resume. Upset against Oklahoma in a conference like the Big 12, I don't think it's going to hurt them long term as long as they get back on track. But the problem in a conference like the Big 12 is you got people like Iowa State who has shown flashes of being good at times this season. You've got teams like Kansas. So you have a team like West Virginia. They lose a game to Oklahoma. It can turn into a snowball very quickly. Sure. And so that's something that Bob Huggins and his squad need to make sure it doesn't happen. They've got to get back on track quickly. I think they're going to be okay, though.
Well, thank you. I want to thank everyone who coming on this episode. Max McDulin, Ethan Graham. I'm Bobby Levine. Check out this upcoming Tuesday, the podcast. We go live on Facebook Live, J&B Weekly Wrap-Up right here. Max McDulin is going to be on that, talking more college basketball. We'll have more time than just a 6-minute segment. Share some light there on more than the American Conference as well. Mm-hmm. So that'd be great. Thank you, Max. And again, everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you this time next week on Ohio Sports Zone.